Good morning, everyone. My name is Hayden Amazon, and thank you so much for joining our brief within Mercer Missile. So I'm here today to outline our comprehensive strategy for maintaining compliance with two foundational pillars of defense security, CMMC, which stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, as well as the NIST Special Publication 800-171 framework. So at Mercer Missile, our role is designing and manufacturing for the Department of Defense, the DoD. This means that our adherence to these standards is non-negotiable. It is part of our, it is the basis of our ability to operate, essentially, right? So this presentation, what it'll do is it'll cover our operational context, kind of like who we are, what we do. It'll go over the specific tools we have chosen to meet these two requirements, as well as give underlying information about security principles that guide our defense architecture. So let's get straight into it and hit that first bullet point of our operational context, who we are. So Mercer Missile is a mid-sized defense contractor. We have about 100 employees, 200 endpoints, 5 servers, and 3 firewalls. Out of our workforce, around 30 are deeply technical, right? 30 require normal internet access for business operations, and 5 operate within secure, no internet zones. This is going to be our air-gapped network. So again, we do handle controlled unclassified information. This will be put into an acronym known as CUI, just to make it a little bit easier. And this CUI we handle is part of our work in designing and manufacturing missile technology for the Department of Defense. So because of this responsibility, because we handle CUI, we hit that first bullet point. We need to comply with CMMC Level 2, as well as align with NIST Special Publication 800-171. Right? If we aren't compliant with these two things, we cannot remain eligible for DoD contractors. So compliance with these two things mean we can be DoD contractors. So all this is cool. I did say a lot of numbers, but you can't see all the numbers. So this next slide will kind of go over our operations layout. Again, this kind of just rehashes the same thing. This goes over all of our numbers where it's just nice and neat for you. So we can see here the same thing. We see our 30 technical focused employees who require consistent internet access for their engineering and administrative duties. We have our specialized group who work in the secure air-gapped areas. This is kind of where we hide our design files, which are going to be our crown jewels, so to speak. So our infrastructure is very robust. It has about 200 endpoints, 3 strategically placed firewalls, and 5 core servers, all of which are dedicated to development and manufacturing of our missile systems. So with these numbers, I kind of want to go into what everything is, right? I feel like that's the next step. So I want to talk about our defense and depth architecture. So here is a brief outline of everything we have. So to meet the strict requirements of CMMC and NIST, we employ a defense and depth architecture, which utilizes some of the best-in-class tools across these 4 key pillars. The first of which is going to be our identity and access management. This is going to be managed by Microsoft Entra ID. I will give you a lot more information about this tool later, as well as every other tool. Also within this, we also got Entra ID, which is just a part of the Entra suite. Kind of backing this is going to be our Cisco ISE. This is going to help with our network access controls. This is going to be our NAC, another acronym. Get used to it. There's going to be a bunch of them. The next thing we have is going to be our endpoint and OS, our operating systems. So this is going to be secured using Microsoft Intune. That's really good for device management. We also have Microsoft Defender for our threat detection and Nessus Professional for vulnerability scanning. Next, we have our government and data security. This is compliance, right? It's just how we comply. And it gets pretty technical, but the tools we use to make this happen are going to be Microsoft Purview, Office 365 E5, GCC High, quite the acronym, right? This is a it's a souped up version of Office 365 E5 made for compliance and made for just this situation. You'll see underneath it Office long-term support. This is what we use, or this is what I'll explain later, is going to be used in our air gap network. And the final thing we have is going to be our instance response and operations. The whole thing is going to be monitored by Sentinel, which is a great tool, especially if you have the proper team, which we do, who can create good KQL tables and who can read logs. Right, supporting Sentinel is going to be Jira Service Management, which is a great tool for instant tracking. And then finally, we have Azure Backup, which is going to be for our data resilience. And in case we get hit by ransomware, everything will be stored in the cloud off premises. Together, all these tools, they ensure coverage for all NIST control families, from policy to prevention controls to detective capabilities. So we just finished going over what our 4 pillars were in our defense and depth architecture. And it was really cool to see where each tool fell into place, especially kind of go over a little bit of what they did. Before going further, I think it's appropriate to take a step back and really go over what CMMC is, as it's very important. Now, I'm sure you can imagine, maybe it was touched up before, it is dealing with governance and compliance. One more time, CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and it is the Department of Defense security framework for protecting sensitive information throughout the defense industry base. It consists of 3 levels. Level 1, which can be foundational. Level 2, advanced. And level 3, expert. We fall under level 2 because we deal with CUI, and corresponding with level 2 means that we must align directly, or level 2 maps directly to NIST SP 800-171. Right? So because of this, we have to adhere to all 110 security controls from this publication. So what does this mean for us? Right? It means a lot of paperwork, it means a lot of governance, it means a lot of compliance. But more specifically, what it means is we must implement, maintain, and prove real operational security maturity, not just paperwork. Right? This also means that we must perform some sort of annual self-assessment, right, which kind of affirms compliance to the DoD. It may even make us have to undergo some sort of third-party assessment, right? But that more or less depends on the contract. Could happen about triannually. Most importantly, though, we must demonstrate that our security program is consistent, well documented, and enforced. It is not just checkboxes, right? We must actually adhere and do these things. So that's what CMC is. It deals with a lot of legality, a lot of frameworks, but there are more laws and authorities that we must also adhere to. CMC is very important. I want to have a whole slide to itself, but this table will break down all the other laws and authorities, how relevant they are to us. First one I start with is FISMA. FISMA stands for Federal Information Security Modernization Act. What this law does, this law directs federal agencies to implement strong cybersecurity standards, and while we're not a federal agency, the Department of Defense does require its contractors to align with these standards through NIST. Now we have DFARS with a bunch of numbers. Let's just call it DFARS, make it easy on ourselves. This is one of the most important requirements for our business. What DFARS does is it mandates that any contractor handling CUI, which again we do, level 2, any contractor handling CUI must fully comply with NIST controls and report cyber incidents within 72 hours. Next up, we have NIST itself. This provides the detailed security controls required for organizations like Mercer Missile ourselves. These standards define exactly how we must protect CUI across control, incident response, configuration management, auditing, and so on. Finally, we have ITAR. ITAR stands for International Traffic and Arms Regulation. It is a U.S. law that controls the export and import of defense-related articles, services, and technical data. Pretty much its primary purpose is to safeguard U.S. national security by regulating these sensitive items, especially within defense, us, and aerospace industries. This is all of our law stuff done. I get it, law stuff can be boring. I don't like it either. What I like is cybersecurity itself and all the terms with it. Now, the thing with cybersecurity is it can get very technical, And one of the most important things we can do is speak the same language, right? So I'm going to go over a bunch of terms. You're going to see a bunch of words, but I'll do my best to explain them. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about them to understand our tools, risk itself, and overall cybersecurity within Mercer Missile. Okay, with that in mind, let's go over some information security. So the first thing we have is the CIA triad. It stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality ensures only authorized users can access sensitive information. Integrity protects information from unauthorized modification, and availability ensures our system and data remain operational when needed. We also apply fundamental security principles such as least privilege, which limits access to what users strictly need. Next up, we have defense in depth, which is kind of as the name suggests, it's layering controls for stronger protection. Last, we have zero trust, which is a modern security model centered around verifying identity at every step and assuming no device or user is inherently trusted. That's our information security. Let's go over to the bad stuff. All right. First word we see is threats, so we're already off to a bad start. Before I go into this, I want to just talk about what risk is, because risk is going to be something we face on almost a daily basis, I'd argue. Risk is the likelihood that a threat exploits a vulnerability, combined with the impact if it happens, right? So it's can it happen, and if it does happen, that is our risk that we're dealing with. First thing I want to talk about is threat, because a threat can cause a risk, right? A threat is anything capable of causing harm. This could be a nation-state actor, which we could definitely face. It could be a cyber criminal group. Even an insider threat. I think back about Edward Snowden and his work in the NSA. So defense contractors like us, like Mercer Missile, are prime targets for nation-state adversaries. Even advanced persistent threat groups are a target for them too. And cyber criminals. And the reason why we're a target of all three is because we have valuable intellectual property of the government. How can they get this information? Well, they have a series of attacks they could do. They can do things like phishing emails, ransomware, web-based intrusion, credential stuffing, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, a bunch. Lots of stuff they can leverage to get our information. But they can typically get these attacks to work through exploiting vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities is a weakness that can be exploited. A couple examples would be like misconfigurations, outdated software, weak or reused passwords, and insecure remote access. Mercer Missile is going to do a great job at combating these threats and tackling this risk. We have layer tools like Defender, Sentinel, Nessus, Intune, and Cisco ISC. These solutions identify vulnerabilities early, right? We're going to be proactive with this. They prevent intrusions and detect malicious activity from across the entire network and across our entire operation environment. With all these terms explained, let's talk about some security models. Our access control models are built upon fundamental security theories. So understanding these theories helps us appreciate the why behind our rules and hopefully expunging the things on the right side of the screen. First one I want to talk about is the Bell model. The Bell model is primarily focused on confidentiality, and it enforces two rules: no read up and no write down. No read up is where a subject, user, cannot read data classified higher than their own clearance. No write down means that a subject cannot write or copy data to a lower security level. This is crucial for preventing the accidental or malicious leakage of CUI to an unclassified system. Now, conversely, the BIBA model focuses entirely on integrity, right? And it kind of works in reverse. No read down, no write up. No read down means that a subject cannot read data at a lower integrity level than themselves. No write up means a subject cannot write data to a higher integrity level, which prevents untrusted, potentially malicious code or data from infecting or modifying a highly trusted system. The combination of this is critical in manufacturing environments like ours, where data correctness is paramount, right? Let's say I'm working with the missile server, right? I need to make sure that the integrity of my missile schematics is the same and it hasn't been modified. If that has been changed even slightly, we're not building a missile like this, we may be building a missile like this, right? So having data integrity, especially in manufacturing, is critical. The BIBA model is perfect for that. So both models inform the design of our access control models within Intra, right, one of our tools, and our network architecture. Next thing I want to talk about is going to be our identity and access management. This is going to be the cornerstone of any security framework, in particular CMMC, access control and identification and authentication. This is going to be AC, access control, IA, identification and authentication. We operate under a zero trust foundation, meaning no user or device is inherently trusted. How do we do this? We do this through tools like Intra Suite and Cisco ISE. These are going to be our primary tools. What Microsoft Intra Suite does to help us do this is it allows us to enforce multi-factor authentication for all 100 employees. I get it, no one likes MFA, but when you're dealing with information, with data to a degree of sensitivity like this, you kind of have to have it. It's also addressing a CMMC requirement, right? So for two reasons we do it, right? We do use role-based access control, RBAC, and this is to ensure the principle of least privilege is followed. For example, our 30 technical employees, let's group them all. They all have administrative rights necessarily for maintenance, while the other 65 general staff have access limited to necessary business applications. So they only have access to what they need to have access to and nothing more, hence least privilege. We also do have conditional access, right, which ensures that users can only log in from compliant devices, approved geographical locations, or during specific business hours, right? We don't want someone logging in from Pyongyang, North Korea, right? So we do have a sort of geo-blocking and device management. Lastly, I want to talk about user authentication, which is handled exclusively through Intra ID. This helps ensure strong, centralized management across the entire organization. So, as you can see here, we're building our defense in depth. Let's make it more secure, and let's talk about network defense. Our network is built around 3 physical firewalls, right? And we have the Cisco ISE. ISE stands for Identity Services Engine. What these things do is they help enforce compliance with NIST network security protocols and controls. And we can do this 2 ways. We can do this through protocols and segmentation. But let's start with protocols since it's the first thing we see. So for the protocols, we rely on TLS 1.2 to protect web traffic. This is going to be our transit data, right? We also have IPsec, which protects internal communications and site-to-site tunnels. SSH is used, secure shell, for administrative access, remote administrative access, right? Lastly, RDP is used through TLS and MFA. This is all done through Intune and Defender. For more of our physical devices, 802.1x, which is going to be NAC, is controlled by our Cisco ISE and ensures that only authorized and compliant devices can join our network. This is typically done through MAC addresses. So we have our protocols. Now let's look more at segmentation, right? We practice strict network segmentation at Mercer Missile. This is separating our environment into distinct VLANs. For example, we may have one for the main office, for our manufacturing floor, for HR, for finances, but most importantly, we have one for our highly protected security enclave. This is going to be our air gap section, right? And those 5 employees are going to be operating here. So this segmentation is a fundamental security model, and it isolates our high value assets, or again, our crown jewels. I mentioned firewalls. The firewalls provide perimeter defense. They help inspect traffic. They enforce IDS and IPS firewall rules. And Cisco ISE acts as our NAC solution, which validates a device's compliance. What this can mean is you cannot join the network, you cannot access the domain unless you have the latest patches and unless you have an active antivirus. So all of this is done before it is allowed on the network. Let's think back to our defense in depth pillars. One of the second ones we had was endpoint and OS, operating system security. So for our connected systems, we are going to use Microsoft Intune, as well as a group policy to enforce configurations and manage the lifecycle of Windows endpoints. This will cover the OS security requirement for Windows, and we'll have external alternate things for Linux, which is you can see as a third bullet point. So Intune automatically applies and monitors security baselines, ensuring OS hardening is performed according to NIST and DoD STIG guidelines. STIG is a new acronym, stands for Security Technology Information Guide. It's pretty much a document containing security configuration requirements for a specific version of an IT product, software, or system. So kind of piggybacking on OS hardening, which is done through Intune. On Windows, we can use BitLocker encryption. We also can use Windows Defender Application Control, some sort of credential guard, and LAPS, which stands for Local Administrator Password Solution, which pretty much means that on a domain we can't reuse passwords. It can just be set up on the domain controller. On Linux, we have different alternative security baselines. We have Audit D, which creates a bunch of logs that are unreadable on the device. They are readable on the device, but you have to have a secondary app to use it. So that's going to be used for our audit logging. And we're also going to use SE Linux, which stands for Security Enhanced. SE Linux is a security architecture for Linux systems and implements mandatory access controls to enforce system-wide security policies. So we're going to have patch management as well. So as soon as a zero-day exploit or zero-day patch is found, it could then be readily applied through Intune to all applicable systems. For our EDR, we have Microsoft Defender. This is going to provide our endpoint detection response, and it has capabilities like active monitoring for threats. Now let's move to our offline systems. So just physically to reach this side of the network, obviously it's air-gapped, but we have these systems still on-prem, but in a special area where only biometric locks can let you in. So these can only be accessed by our 5 personnel, and it is done through fingerprints. Once these 5 people can access this restricted space, like physically restricted space, we're going to use Office LTSC 2024, which stands for Long-Term Servicing Channel Version. And what this does is it eliminates cloud connectivity dependency. Right? This is going to be fully on-prem, so all of our most important documents and assets are going to be centralized. Right? So these systems can be running hardened. These are going to be running, obviously, this hardened Windows image, and they're going to be optimized for data and application security and isolated from common internal threats. These systems, their physical ports are going to be limited, right? And that can be done through Defender, right? So if you're trying to plug in a USB, it may be blocked. Right? If you're trying to connect to a port on some sort of switch, it may be blocked. Within this, we do have a way to manually install updates. We do it through something called a sneaker net process. And since it's highly controlled, it means no unauthorized data ingress or egress can happen. So pretty much we have a whole separate area to hold our extremely sensitive CUI. Let's go to governments and cryptography. The whole point of this is kind of piggybacking on what I just said. Protect the crown jewels. So protecting CUI requires strong cryptography, which is based on 2 fundamental types. We have our symmetric and asymmetric cryptography. Before going into it, I want to talk about what FIPS is. What FIPS is, it is a US government standard developed by NIST, can't escape that name, that specifies security requirements for cryptography modules used by federal agencies to protect sensitive information. So FIPS exist, and symmetric and asymmetric encryption cryptography are built on that. So how are we going to use symmetric cryptography? Well, we're going to use AES 256 for data at rest. This is going to be used for our bulk data encryptions, such as securing data at rest. We're going to use AES 256 via BitLocker, which was mentioned in the previous slide, and we're going to use that to encrypt all 200 endpoints, satisfying the CMMC media protection requirement. Next, we have our asymmetric encryption. We're going to do this through RSA 2048. This is used for secure key exchange, non-repudiation, and digital signatures. So when something comes across the network, it is digitally signed, and we know it is authentic to us. This ensures that the only intended recipient can decrypt the symmetric keys used for a session. We do have some really cool tools to make this happen. We have Microsoft Purview. That is our chosen data governance solution. It enforces DLP, data loss prevention policies, and it prevents the unauthorized sharing of CUI. Let's say, for example, that what this can do in this context is it can block emails containing specific keywords or file types being sent outside our environment, right? And it can kind of work with Office 365 E5 to confine or to define what those keywords are and what our environment is. Lastly, and importantly, what we can do is we can label all CUI. This enables, or this makes sure that both users and automated systems handle the data according to its classification level. We now have our data protected at rest, in transit. Our data is good. Let's go on to more of our endpoints themselves. And how we're going to do this is through our threat and vulnerability management. So, obviously the goal of this is to have continuous assessment and proactive risk management. Having proactive protections, precautions is one of the best way to stay ahead of cyber threats as much as you reasonably can. Right? So, how we're going to do this is going to be mostly through NIST Professional. How this tool is going to work is it's going to perform weekly credential-based, right? So we're going to get the credentials and we're going to see what it can find. Credential-based scans across our 5 servers and 200 endpoints. This is going to provide a vast, detailed technical view of all of the weaknesses in any of our systems, right? From here, we can sort of perform our risk assessment, which will be prioritizing findings based on the criticality of the asset and the vulnerability themselves. Recall back when I mentioned that server under the security models, that server that held all the schematics for the missiles. Right? If there's a vulnerability within that server, that might be the most prominent. That's the one we should look at first. Right? It's paramount to fix that one first, rather than it be some miscellaneous endpoint that gets used by one person once a week. Right? But there's also the severity score on top of it. This is going to be the CVSS, Common Vulnerability Severity Score. If this, typically, depending on the tool, it can be ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever the case is. The high number typically reveals how severe it is. Things that are going to be very severe, right, critical, I guess is a better way of saying it, we can try to remediate those first as well. It'll probably just be some sort of judgment call between the system itself and the severity score. Okay. But we do have a bunch of cool tools to make this as easy as possible. Again, NIST Professional is a great tool of staying ahead on these threats. They have a very vast database full of CVEs that's constantly being updated. I believe they have over 10,000 right now. And Defender itself has really good threat anomaly detection, right? So let's say that there's something like impossible travel or mass file deletion, Defender will pick it up. So the combination of both these tools mean that our threat and vulnerability management is going to be top tier. Now I want to talk about incident response and ops, stands for operations. The whole goal of this is going to be 24/7 monitoring. Let's flick back real quick. This is continuous assessment and proactive risk management. This is going to be our continuous monitoring. So when any of our preventative controls fail, our ability to detect and respond is super important, and this falls under the NIST incident response family. Sentinel Again, great tool. We have a dedicated team of security analysts. It's going to be our SOC, who are going to be looking at the tables, who are going to be creating KQL queries themselves and checking to make sure everything looks good. But essentially, Sentinel is going to act as our SIEM, or our Security Information and Event Management System. How this works is it's going to aggregate all of our logs across our firewalls, our servers, and endpoints, including inputs from Defender. And it's going to put them all in one spot. So this aggregation of all this data is really important to kind of correlate disparity events. I mentioned just before that Defender can pick up anomalies, but Sentinel can pick them up too in a more centralized point. So you can see those same exact things, like it says in the third bullet point, like impossible travel, like mass file deletion, like the creation of a new account, all in one spot and accessible via cloud. Right. From here, we can ticket anything we see, right? So once an incident is detected, the workflow is immediately pushed to Jira Service Management. And what this does, it ensures a clear, auditable lifecycle where we can detect, we can analyze, we can contain, we can eradicate, we can recover. Jira provides the necessary documentation and tracking requirement by the CMMC for every single security incident, which is great. So now we have accomplished 24/7 monitoring. We have continuous assessment, proactive risk management. Everything's good, technical. But there's one part you can't escape, and that's the human element. So one of the biggest causes of cyber attack that we can face, despite our suite of tools, is just that. It's human error. It is going to be the most common, most prevalent, and it is probably going to fall under the umbrella of not a matter of if, only a matter of when. But despite that tragedy, I guess you could say, we can do our best to provide some sort of preventative measure. And I would like to introduce our tool, KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is going to be our security awareness and training platform. It provides continuous education, especially in, it does it through monthly simulated phishing attacks. So our employees, all of them, all 100, are going to be facing threats, in quotation marks, like phishing and social engineering. Like we talked about before, these are common attacks that the employees may face. And while we cannot prevent them all, we can do our due diligence to make sure they do not happen. And in the process of doing this monthly testing, obviously it's not enjoyed, but we're building quite a culture of ourselves. Right? We are going to have the culture in Mercer Missile of, security first, right? That's pretty much what our culture is going to be, right? Every employee is going to have a clear understanding of risk. They're going to know about the probability of harm. They're going to understand what threats are. They're going to understand what threats can do. But we're not going to make it so it impedes on their action. We're just going to build a socially aware culture. And that is going to be the ethics we hope to push into Mercer. So that concludes all the pillars. Now we're looking at this massive encyclopedia of tools. This is going to be everything that we do have implemented right now, and it is a lot. So much so that I'm not going to even bore reading it all to you. Right? You can see a lot of the tools that I mentioned on the left side already. You can see their appropriate control on the right side. There are some tools that didn't get mentioned as much as maybe they should have, like Microsoft Intune. Intune is a great tool, and it helps enforce compliance across all ends because it helps with device configuration, patch management, and security baselines, as well as a whole suite of other things. It's really cool too, looking at all these tools, as you can see here. Microsoft, Office, right? Microsoft is obviously one of the biggest enterprise software companies, and when they make these tools, they all work together really well. As such, they also work together really well in governance and compliance. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, E5 GCC High is made with security and compliance in mind. So these tools functioned really well together, and the combination of all of them makes sure we meet we meet both pillars of the CMMC in all 110 NIST controls. Right? If you are curious about what the rest of the tools do, you can pause the video and you can look to the right. Pretty much, we meet every CMC Level 2 requirement. We support all 110 NIST 800-171 controls. We do a really good job of protecting CUI across the board. Okay, so across identity, devices, data, networks, logging, all of them. These tools are policies. And again, you're looking more at our technical stuff. We, of course, are going to have a suite of offline policies, like written policies, right? Saying what to do, what not to do. I think back to, I believe it was the Cisco network hack. You can have a policy that states you cannot sync your credentials in your Google Chrome browser, right? That'd be a really good written policy. And it's something you can ensure that we will do. This was more focused technical, but that writing those written policies, those are definitely be a staple of our stance as well. They were equally as important. But as you can see from the previous slides, we did have continuous monitoring, continuous alerting, so we are providing continuous monitoring and alerts. And lastly, through Jira, we can ensure that we have full audit readiness. What all this does together is it gives us a strong cybersecurity foundation and maintains our eligibility to work with the Department of Defense. So, goal achieved. I'll leave you with these lasting words. Thank you for joining today's brief. Our cybersecurity posture is essentially not only for compliance, but for protecting national security and the integrity of the defense industry base. So there's a lot kind of residing on this. As Mercer Mission, I do want to say, or as Mercer Missile, I do want to say that we do remain committed to maintaining a secure, resilient environment that safeguards CUI and supports the mission of designing and manufacturing missile technology for the Department of Defense. If you have any questions about any specific tools, you can see back to the encyclopedia. Otherwise, thank you. Take care.